Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we will be focusing in one of the last episodes of the Daily Debate for 2022 and ahead of receiving 2023, as next Sunday will be marking the first day of a new year. Tonight we'll be focusing on what happened in the past year in 2022 in terms of construction, in terms of having more infrastructure, better infrastructure for the future generations and the future years, as well as we will be concentrating on the construction of new cities, having a new capital, the new administrative capital, having new bridges, new capital, new cities all over the country. One of the latest cities to be announced, the new Alamein, the new Mansoura city, as we did see in the past month. All this and more during the course of the episode, how the construction will be leading up to having more investments in the future and hopefully in 2023. We will be starting straight away with the main top stories for today, coming from the local scene and on the African level, as well as His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi followed up on the outcome of a visit to Tanzania by a ministerial delegation. At a meeting with the delegation that comprised of Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri and the Minister of Housing Asim Al-Ghazar, the President was briefed on the progress made in the establishment of the Julius Nyerere Dam in the fellow African country. The dam is constructed by the Egyptian-led consortium of companies. President Sisi also reviewed the implementation of the underdevelopment housing projects nationwide, including the Ancient Cairo Development Project. On the other hand, on a more festive note, as I said, that we will be receiving 2023 in a matter of a week or less. And today, a lot of people all over the world have celebrated Christmas, as His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi sent greeting cables to the kings and presidents of the world countries on the occasion of Christmas. In his cables, President al-Sisi wished the world leaders and their peoples a blessed year that would mark a new start for development, progress and prosperity. We will be having a report, the first of the Daily Debate for tonight, as the construction of new cities, of a new capital, of new roads and bridges all over the country. How can this be leading to triggering growth in the country for the upcoming years and getting more investments in the future? All this and more in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
Egypt has placed a strong emphasis on infrastructure development and construction as key engines of urban growth and financial stability in the years since the country embarked on an ambitious IMF-backed economic reform program. Egypt's road networks, power production capacity, and rail infrastructure have expanded rapidly in recent years, underpinned by population growth, a desire to increase exports and efforts to capitalize on the country's strategic location. The new administrative capital, NAC, such a mega project looks set to propel construction activity from 2022 onwards. Egypt's growing population is the primary driver of construction activity. While Egypt was able to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic without experiencing some of the most severe economic and health challenges seen in other countries, it highlighted the need to strengthen infrastructure. Moreover, private sector investment will be increasingly key in meeting the goals of Egypt Vision 2030. The government has been working on various reforms and policy initiatives to support its urban agenda. Central to these efforts are public-private partnerships, which the authorities are promoting in the construction sector. The PPP Central Unit, housed in the Ministry of Finance, is central to these efforts. In addition to being a key driver of growth, the construction sector is a critical employer. In 2020, 3.5 million people were employed in the industry, up from 2.7 million in 2010. Large labor-intensive projects such as the NAC, the New Alamein, and other new cities, as well as transport infrastructure developments, helped to sustain employment levels during the pandemic. Large-scale projects have been a priority. They have also strengthened the position of local businesses, which are important partners in the private sector. The construction sector has received a boost from international donors and multilateral financial institutions in recent years. Foreign direct investment (FDI) in the construction sector reached $884.2 million in the fiscal year 2019-2020, according to the latest data from the Central Bank of Egypt, representing 5.6% of the total FDI inflows. This marked a considerable increase from $691.8 million, equal to 4.2% of the total the previous fiscal year. Indeed, the development of new cities, transport networks, and other mega projects looks set to present a range of opportunities for local and foreign investments in the coming years.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Khalid Dahawi, the head of the accounting department at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year.
Same to you, hoping that all Egypt and all our viewers will be blessed with a new year that's full of better chances than the previous years, inshallah.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, as we did see in the past report, we will be focusing tonight on what happened in 2022 in general and maybe in the previous years as well. One of the main topics that we have tackled during this year is the economic reform program, as we did see at the end of it, the loan coming from the IMF, which is it says something that we have succeeded in the first part of the economic reform program. How do you see the importance of implementing this program, and how much have we succeeded in implementing it?
First of all, let's say that the IMF approval of the loan couldn't have come at a better time, because in a sense it does give credit to what has happened. IMF is not a small organization, it's not a political organization. It carries a lot of respect and weight in the world, and it would not offer Egypt the last loan except if there is real belief that there is success in what has happened. So this type of accreditation, and I'm not talking about the financial part, but actually the trust in the economic reforms and what they would lead to in the future, because the IMF wouldn't give you money unless they have done their homework to make sure that you'll be able to pay it back. So in a sense, you can think of that as the icing on 2022, that the IMF approves of what we've been doing. And lately, we've been seeing that the IMF has taken a very important, a different strategy with Egypt, is there's a prescription that we have to go through. And every time we fulfill part of the prescription, we get part of the loan. So this in itself says that we've been succeeding, because none of the loans have stopped. We've been taking these loans. They've been increasing from a period to another. And in a sense, the approval of the IMF in itself just says that we've been successful in the past couple of years.
Doctor, you mentioned the future, and you mentioned that the IMF wouldn't have given those huge loans to Egypt unless they know that we will be paying them back. So this means that they trust us. Do you think that the people within Egypt, the citizens of Egypt, of course not all of them are economic experts or financial experts, and they don't totally understand the process, how do you see the future of Egypt in the coming few years in terms of finance and the economic stability? Because, as you mentioned, there is trust from the outside institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. How do you see the citizens living through this process that you've mentioned?
Unfortunately, that the international trust, in my mind, does not transcend into Egypt. The people still in Egypt have lived on historical notes from the government and lack of trust with the Egyptian government. And that is because, as you've mentioned, due to ignorance, and I'm going to use a very strong word, ignorance to economic policies and repercussions of economic policies. People want to succeed without actually feeling or paying for that success. There's no way you're going to get and overcome diseases unless you take a bitter medicine, and medicines are very bitter. And as we have talked about investments, it's also very important to talk about inflation. We have, and the Egyptian people have been feeling inflation again and again and again, derived from devaluation of the Egyptian currency. And that have made people in the Egyptian market, given the poor people that don't understand much, very unhappy. It's very common to understand that they're seeing that their salaries are not moving, but in the other side, the prices are going up and going up very harshly. And it is harmful and hurtful to many households. So, in a sense, I don't think that trust is shared within the local economy.
But on the other hand, better days are lying ahead, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so, and I hope so. You have to look at, from my side of the world, the country is divided into three parts: investment, financing, and operations. We've been doing very well in the investment side. We've been doing the right things in investing in roads, in new cities, as you mentioned, infrastructures, construction, and so on. However, on the other side, we have some signals about financing issues, that our financing has become so high, and maybe there needs to be a look or a re-look at the financing side. I'm going to take the IMF word for saying that they've looked at it and they think it's doable. It is harsh, and it's going to be hard. Because as we said, the investing part, we're doing very well. The financing part, not so well. The operating part, we need to see more. We need to see more factories. We need to see more agricultural land. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to pay for the financing cost. Roads, bridges, and infrastructure don't pay back, except after a very long period of time. So to overcome and mediate that, we need to have a very strong move into the idea of industry and also agriculture. And I was happy to hear in the last report that was at the beginning of the show, that there's so much in services too, especially in the foreign direct investment related to contracting. Services is an area that is untapped to Egypt. India, which I think is a comparable country to Egypt, has tapped that market with software, with call centers and so on. We have not been able to do the same. Because agriculture and industry depend on very high capital sources. But services, you don't need that much capital, and we can do that. So I was happy to see that we're doing and spearheading a consortium to build a dam in African countries, for example.
Tanzania.
Exactly, and that is important. Again, that also says a new thing about Egypt, and I think very few people talk about it, which is our understanding finally of the importance of Africa. We've played so much, we've tried to be a big player in Europe, in the US, in other places in the world, but we have failed to see our background, which is Africa. Has always respected Egyptians, have always asked us for help, and I think it's very important that we start looking into that area.
Yes, the dam of Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, with a delegation of Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, the Minister of Housing Asim Al-Ghazzar, and after the visit, the comeback and the meet-up with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. It's like a report of what happened in the African country. What does this say about the bilateral relations between Egypt and Africa, and Egypt and Tanzania in specific, not just in terms of the brotherly ties between Egypt and Africa, but also on the financial, the economic bilateral ties between both countries? I
think, if I can see this correctly, we're starting to see the importance of the market of Africa. We're starting to see that it is about time, and we are late in investing in Africa, which is a market that respects a lot our products, that can take out a lot of our power, whether for services or products or agricultural products. and can increase our foreign currency incoming amounts. Africa is a win-win situation. Africa is a place we've neglected for quite a while, and I'm happy to see that the new administration of Egypt has seen the importance of that, have started giving it the enough needed importance, have looked into it. Tanzania is one of the countries that has a lot of, beside economic, also political impact, seeing that there are other dams on the Nile. So it has a lot of security issues that has to do with the water security, and that's a new term we haven't heard before and we're starting to understand. We've always been the happy country that always had water at the end of the line. So now we're seeing water security is an issue. And all of that ties into, as you mentioned, if we get to understand Africa, to start working with Africa, it's a great opportunity for us in the sense that it provides us with opportunities for exporting and exporting services especially. That will allow us foreign direct investment and allow us a lot of also foreign currency, and allow us, as we said, that's another part, water security, which is a very important file, I think, at this point.
If we return to the economic reform program, as you mentioned, the trust that is being shared by the International Monetary Fund and the success that we have had in implementing the first part of it over the past few years. And it is not the same look for the citizens, they're not sharing the same look. But do you think that the efforts of the government in terms of having a decent life, for example, Hayat Karima in villages, or maybe about 50 million affected citizens in the villages or the rural areas, can this be better for the citizens in the upcoming years to come with the economic reform program that you are implementing at the same time?
I have seen firsthand, I'm a fallah in myself, and I have land and I do that. So I go down and I've seen for the first time ever in the past 3-4 years real villages with poor people where they never dreamt of water, electricity and internet are being provided. On that side, people are seeing that. But again, Egypt has become very big. We have 110 million people. So we're giving birth to about 2.5 new individual every year, which is a country in itself. So the challenges are big. And we have to make sure that we start talking some serious business. And I think the next parts that are coming will have to be, for example, decreasing or canceling free education at the level of the universities at least, which is something that we've all been waiting for. Because it's not a free education anyway, and we all know that there are private lessons and so on, so why not really call it what it is? Having said that, we're waiting for these bold decisions, like the rest of the bold decisions that the political administration has taken. And as you said, for the first time in Egypt, there are villages that have seen the light, the water, the sewer. They never saw this before. But at the same time, that comes at a cost. And people that see the advantages are not the same people that pay the cost. And sometimes that imbalance makes it very hard for people to actually understand the depth of the problem. My side is, and I've always seen it, is that there are two sides that are having a problem. Both sides have to move together. Government has to start becoming more transparent. I would hire consultants to do that, to build trust. And there are consultants in the world that builds trust. And the government has to be very transparent about mentioning what has been accomplished in real numbers. City X, village X have received X and Y and so on. You cannot leave the people to make on their own decisions, because at that time we have again and again a problem that most people do not either understand the topic or are ignorant about the topic. And in both cases, it's a big problem that they don't understand why are we doing all of this. Where's all of this money going? There really needs to be some people who speaks the language of the people, Stop talking theories to them, macroeconomic theories. We are professors, we talk macroeconomic theories. Most people in the newspapers talk about the IMF. Go down to the level of the people.
Simplify things.
Exactly. And talk to them about the simple way that this is affecting their life. And if it's not affecting their life today, it's going to affect their life tomorrow. If not tomorrow, after tomorrow. We all have children and grandchildren. Those are the ones we care about. And unfortunately, on the other side, there's a lot of rumors in Egypt, and nobody answers these rumors. The dollar will be 60 pounds. Who made up 60 pounds? Where did it come from? Nobody knows. But nobody stands up and says, no, it's going to be X because of this. Tomorrow, we're not going to be able to pay Egyptian debt. Where did we hear anybody come out and say, the Egyptian debt is X, we have to pay, we have 2 years of very harsh payments that are the next ones that are coming. We'll pay this amount and this amount. We have decided to move in this direction to pay this. I think this type of truth, transparency with the people will have a long way with the Egyptian people. But leaving them to rumors and unfortunately the internet plays a horrible role because there are so many people who hate this country, who talk about things in the economic arena of this country, and nobody tells them why not or how, or nobody discusses it with them. So the poor people that have been seeing prices going up and up and up are most probably going to believe that. So I think, to summarize what I've been saying, transparency from the government, a level of discussion from the government that transcends down to the normal, simple individual and not to the elite in the country. Number 3, talking about the real plans of the government, and people will see that these plans start coming to be implemented, will make the trust increase between the government and the people. Because it is a shame that the international institutions believe in us and we don't believe in ourselves. But again, could we have done anything else? No, we couldn't. We need...
so that's the best that we can do in terms of taking the right path.
There's never the best, but this is a very good way, because it's a very different way than the predecessors have been doing. We have been, to give you an example, we have been controlling the foreign exchange rate for 7, 8, 9 years, and then it bursts up with 70, 80%. Well, we know that every year it goes 5 or 8%. So let's leave it 5 and 8% every year. Let's really leave it to float. We've never done this before. We've always said it's floating, but it's always been controlled. And then every 7, 8 years, we get a burst of foreign exchange, which we've done. I've witnessed it 3, 4 times in my life, not my grandparents or my parents. Personally, I've witnessed 3 or 4 of these, where you see 70, 80% devaluation. We also need, I think the radio, television have a big role, because in a nutshell, let me give you a small example that I was talking about in the university and my students were very interested in, is that most of the newspapers and television talks about how bad the dollar has went. When in reality, the dollar has no impact. Dollar hasn't moved, or the foreign currencies haven't moved. It is actually our Egyptian pound who has deteriorated. And it's about time we tell people we have a problem with our Egyptian pounds. We cannot keep trying to sell that story of the dollar is bad, the dollar is increasing. The dollar is not increasing. We are, our foreign currency is devaluing.
How can we be boosting our own currency?
Well, we have export. We have foreign direct investment. These are the 2 windows. Think about someone who has a cancer and you're giving him aspirin. Well, you can't anymore. As I was coming here today, I read a very positive news that says that our Prime Minister, Dr. Mabouli, and ministers have talked about allowing inventory to come in the amount of $5 billion. If you can imagine that they've been in customs for many months, waiting for the Prime Minister himself to come down and help in getting them into the country. Well, if you don't get these $5 billion is a lot of money, by the way. That's a huge. If you translate it to Egyptian pounds, to release them in the market. And what do we import? Well, we import food, and we import parts of operations, industrial equipment or industrial raw materials. Well, if you stop 5 billion of that, well, food is going to be scarce, and therefore we are not going to see that the prices will stabilize, but will go up because you've stopped the food at the source. Second, if you stop the equipment or raw materials for operations, you've stopped the factories. If you stop the factories, you stop the export. So it's a horrible ordeal. And that is because nobody wants to make decisions. We are waiting for a prime minister to go to the port and say, we are going to help release, I just read this actually on the way, we're going to release $5 billion worth of material in ports. Why are they still there? So, and if they're there for a month or two, you could understand the problem in the market.
So do we need a change in the mindset of the officials and the citizens at the same time?
I think if you allow me, we need a long-term change in ethics, education. And they're not the same thing.
But this needs patience. Do we have patience?
Can
we be patient for 10 or 20 years to be changing?
Again, if you notice, I said we have cancer. I didn't say we have a cold or we have a flu. It's not going to go far. It's not going to go easily out. It is a long-term structural disease that needs a long-term solution.
But it can be eliminated.
Of course it can. Nothing. Countries of the world, if you read the history, and we don't, countries were worse than us. There are countries that were devastated in the World War II that were destroyed to ashes, and they became the leaders of the world. Everything is doable if you can align government, administration, and people together. And again, I am saying this because I take you back to the idea of trust and openness and transparency. And lack of implementation of laws. We have a lot of laws, but we implement very little of them. So it's about time we implement laws. When laws are implemented, people will follow. So, as you said, it is a long-term process that is ethics to be injected back in kids in homes, education to be real education in schools and universities, and then you'll see a different Egypt. You cannot have economic reform without the people. Nothing goes without...
The circumstances that we are having nowadays and what we can see all over the world, even after the COVID-19, after the coronavirus pandemic all over the world, after the Russian invasion to Ukraine or the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, this has impact all over the world, even Europe and Germany and Britain and France and the USA. So you've mentioned a very important element, which is ignorance and education and knowing the culture, what is happening all over the world. A project like Haya Karima, A Decent Life, to be getting the internet, electricity, water, sewers into the rural areas outside of Cairo, outside of Alexandria, outside of the main cities that we know all over the country. Do you think that the internet could be playing a role in terms of education, that someone who is living outside of Cairo by hundreds or thousands of kilometers can know what is happening all over the world, so he can be understanding the efforts of the government, the role of the IMF, what is the IMF, what they are giving us loans, what is the impact of this loan, what is happening, why the prices are going up. Do you think this would be changing the mindset of about 50 or 60 million Egyptians?
Yes, I think it would. I think that this has to move in two parallel lines. Number one is that internet information becomes available for people. Number two, we as elite people, we as administrators of Egypt, we as the ministers, prime ministers, and so on, understand that the game rules have changed. There is a lot of wrong information. It is about time we also start putting the right information. How many people, and I would love if someone starts a survey in Egypt, say, Haya Karima, how many houses received electricity? Nobody knows. Haya Karima, how many people in the street have got money out of it to help them with unemployment? Nobody knows. How much or how many people in Egypt know of the amount of services provided and the amount of money funded into this program? Nobody knows. So again, the rules of the game have changed. The internet have changed everything. In the past, we governments directed information. The new role in the world today is that information is free, but it's also very dangerous because it's not verified. I can come and say tomorrow X and you can say Y. And people will go to those who they trust. So because of our past, they go to non-governmental stations. So if we are able to show trustworthy information to the people, tell them the truth and they will learn. Because they see it in the street. I mean, if you come and say, there is no inflation, but I know I'm buying oil for 60 pounds or 80 pounds and it was 20. I know. Nobody needs to tell me this.
Yes.
And when this happens, I will always not respect the government and trust the government. So be open, be trustworthy. This is, in the long term, is going to work. And as you said, it is a long-term process. It's not a turnkey project. Unless we are able to adhere to this and keep going into this economic reform, we're not going to. But also, on the sides, work on ethics, education, and work on actually transparency and telling the people the truth about what's going on.
Providing information and building trust at the same time, not just for the Egyptians or the citizens, but also for the international institutions. Dr. Khalid, as we'll be heading to the next report of the Daily Debate for tonight, and it talks about investing in Egypt as a path to the future, as we will be receiving a new year on Sunday or on Saturday night, the 2023, the year of progress and prosperity. Hopefully, as we did see, we need a change in mindset of the Egyptian citizens, and we need more transparency in building trust between the Egyptian government and the citizens in terms of having a better future for the upcoming generations. All this and more in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
Egypt has embarked on an ambitious and transformative plan to advance its potential through the construction of a modern, responsive, and equitable economy. The government today is working on multiple tracks to transform Egypt's economy through smart reforms, social justice, and targeted investment. The ambitious modernization program adopted by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and supported by the IMF and the World Bank includes several key components: decreasing the budget deficit to 9.1% and reducing public debt to 95% of GDP, liberalizing Egypt's foreign exchange policy to strengthen competitiveness, support exports and tourism, and attract foreign direct investment, which in turn will foster growth and jobs and reduce financing needs. Overhauling the legislative and regulatory environment for investment, including the implementation of a new unified investment law. Ensuring social protection for all Egyptians by directing 1% of the GDP to additional food subsidies, cash transfers to the elderly and low-income families, health insurance for young children and female primary family providers, and other targeted social programs, including vocational training for youth. In addition, Egypt has embarked on a number of national mega projects that aim to enhance the competitiveness of the economy, create employment opportunities, and attract foreign and domestic private investments, with work underway by more than 1,000 companies and nearly 2 million Egyptian workers. These national mega projects represent a new chapter for Egypt. Chief amongst these mega projects is the Suez Canal. A new integrated network of economic centers is being created, known as the Suez Canal Area Development Project, an innovative development area that will transform 76,000 square kilometers along one of the world's most important trading routes into an international commercial hub. In addition to this mega project, Egypt's energy sector is also ripe for growth and investment thanks to the massive Zohr natural gas field that was discovered in the Mediterranean Sea and began production in 2017. Daily production from the field exceeds 350 million cubic feet per day. Production from Zohr brings Egypt closer to energy independence. To help foster growth and foreign investment, President Sisi ratified the new investment law that includes a 50% tax break on investments made in underdeveloped areas and government support for the cost of connecting utilities to new projects. This follows the launch of Egypt's Vision 2030, a sustainable development strategy that establishes a roadmap for maximizing the use of Egypt's competitive opportunities and advantages. Egypt's economy has responded with rapid growth in exports, investment, and improved public finances. Egypt has transformed its economy to better compete on the global stage and create jobs for Egyptians. As a result, Egypt's economy is one of the most dynamic economies.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. As we did see in the past report, Dr. Khalid Dahawi, the program that we have here in Egypt, the economic reform program, is being supported by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. One of the main ambitions of this program is to be having a new unified investment law. What is the importance of that for the outside investors to be coming and seeing the opportunities here in the country?
Actually, you're touching on something that is very important, which is most people, when they invest in foreign countries, they do their homework. Usually they start with something called a feasibility study.
Yes.
If they do a feasibility study, they want to know what goes into that feasibility study in terms of laws, in terms of costs, in terms of returns, and they want a stabilized law. They don't want a law that we keep changing.
Yes.
They want something that we have stays for 20, 30 years. So they build their feasibility study and they get what they have invested. Nothing changes. So it is very, very important to understand that they need a place where they understand Egypt. I want to come and invest in Egypt. Why do I have to go to 10 or 20 different ministries and offices to understand Egypt's laws and decisions on what to do to invest in Egypt? We've seen countries all over the world that have a one-stop shop. If I'm an investor with X billions of dollars that want to come, well, you come, you sit here, we run for you. Unfortunately, we have the opposite. I'll give you a very silly example. If you go to renew your driver's license, you take the paper and you run from one office to the next. Everywhere in the world, you go, you sit someplace, someone takes the papers, you don't see anything until you get the license. That's exactly the problem with Egypt. We have laws that are separate, not related, sometimes even contradicting. And everyone who comes to invest in Egypt knows that he cannot trust these laws because of the fact that there are so many, and the second is because they're contradicting. And the third, sometimes they're not good for investment. For example, price of land is very high. Excuse me, the tax is very high and so on. But again, we also change that. Every now and then we decide that there's a better way of doing it. No, we can't do that. You can't play games with international investors. International investor builds his feasibility study on circumstances. You should let him work with these circumstances.
So what is keeping us from doing so? Having a unified investment law for the benefit of us first and for the benefit of the investors?
I'm the wrong person to answer that question. It's been a mystery for me. It's just the way our culture has always been. It's always the way we've controlled. Every ministry wants to control. I don't think we have real synchronization between our ministries. I think every ministry wants the best for the ministry. I'll give you one example, land prices. If you're in a country where you have plenty of land, and you need agriculture, and you need factories, why do you even take money from people for land? Why are you trying to have, and we've heard of bids of people and trying to sell the land in the correct price. Why would you do that? Give people the land for free, let them go, and that will make their cost of production lower, that will bring more foreign direct investment, that will even make the local people come in. Today we're always afraid of, if I go to buy a piece of land, we're going to give you deductions. Why give it for free? The land is there. Everybody does the work.
Because we have maybe less than a minute, does this affect the competitiveness of Egypt, not just for Egypt against Europe, or Egypt against the USA, or Egypt against other countries, but I will be speaking about Egypt against the neighboring countries, maybe some of the Gulf countries? Do you think that they have the edge over us in terms of competitiveness, in terms of getting more investments into them and not into us?
They do, but we are actually the ones who have the comparative advantage. We just don't know how to sell ourselves enough. Which countries like Emirates have done a lot better job than us. So let's do like our ancestors
and we still have
did.
the advantage.
Yes. We actually have the advantage. Let our ancestors did. We used to send Ba'asat Almiya to France to learn how they do things. Yes. Let's do the same thing. And learn how people who have surpassed us in this area have done and implement it.
Yes, Dr. Khaled Bahawati, head of the accounting department at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. Once again, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you and your family.
And of course, this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. I will be leaving you, however, with the major presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past week, and I'll be seeing you in the new year. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
President al-Sisi checks on availability of basic commodities across the nation. He also reviews the status of the current agricultural season 2022-2023. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi follows up on the development efforts at public business sector companies and gives directives to the government to maintain its ongoing efforts for developing the companies affiliated to the public business sector. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Health and Population Dr. Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, Presidential Advisor for Health and Prevention Affairs Dr. Muhammad Awad Tag Eddin. The meeting followed up on public health initiatives and improving healthcare services in basic care units nationwide. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with the President of the Republic of France, Emmanuel Macron, on the sidelines of the Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership in Jordan. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi participates in an Egyptian, Jordanian, Iraqi, Kuwaiti, French summit in the Dead Sea, Jordan. The five-way summit was held on the sidelines of the Baghdad Conference for Cooperation and Partnership. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of Defense and Military Production, General Mohammad Zaki. President al-Sisi follows up on the state's efforts to explore for natural gas and petroleum. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi reviews the features of the new draft personal status law and directs the establishment of a family care fund and an insurance policy to support it financially. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi directs the concerned authorities to end the occupation of roads with abandoned cars and vehicles in various cities and neighborhoods nationwide.